welcome to this wonderful conversation that I've been anticipating with the glorious Sue Atkins, who brings so much colour and brightness and enthusiasm to the important conversation of supporting parents. And the work that you've been doing over the last 35 years as a deputy head, as a mum, and as a parenting coach in supporting parents is something that I think is so vital. You now have this fantastic reach, Sue, through this Morning, ITV's This Morning, BBC Radio, Disney Junior, Good Morning Britain, India's Parenting World magazine. You are able to reach thousands of parents. And I am fascinated to know about the mission and the messages that you have for parents. We know in Qualified Tutor that the relationship between the parent, the student, and the tutor, or any educator, is a key indicator of how successful and thriving a student is going to be. And so bringing you as a representative for parents into our conversation here today is really, really powerful. Welcome, Sue.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It sounded like I was Carlsberg. I'm everywhere.
So, my lovely, let's start out by talking about your story in supporting parents. How did you find yourself in this position today?
Gosh, okay. Well, the story actually comes from when my father died, quickly followed by my mother within the same year. And I had been teaching for 22 years. This is quite a long time ago. I'd been teaching and I loved it. And you reassess. And I was walking my dogs one day across the muddy fields here, and I thought, what did they give me? And I thought, actually, they gave me the gift of time, which I've been talking about recently in my new podcast, but also they gave me the gift of self-esteem. And in fact, they're both related in a way, because if you feel important, you feel connected, you feel listened to, you feel heard, as well as having firm, fair boundaries round what you get up to. But that was where it all came from. And then I thought, I've worked with the children now for 22 years. It's the parents who give the children that confidence and that belief and that time, certainly at the beginning. And as they grow, it changes, but you're still within their lives all the time. So that's when I went off and retrained with Paul McKenna and Tony Robbins in something called NLP. I went off and retrained as a life coach and focusing on parenting. So yeah, that's where it's taken me. It's taken me to radio, TV, writing all these books that have won awards and all sorts of things. Very blessed. But it is such an important job being a parent. And, I want parents to feel celebrated and supported, not judged.
I am so touched by that story. So, Qualified Tutor was born when my father, who's up there when my father passed away. And I know that there are moments in our lives when we reevaluate and we sort of we sort of have a renewed direction, don't we? And I think it must be a beautiful legacy for your parents that you lost them and turned yourself into somebody who speaks to parenting.
That's really interesting, and I hadn't thought of it like that. But I'm very interested in the catalyst for change, like you've just said there. We share a lot: teaching, parenting, tutoring. And what I was talking recently, actually, only before I jumped on here, to a young man who's doing an app, and I was telling him about you because tutors are so wonderful in that it's about self-esteem, it's about confidence, it's about giving a child a belief, not just about how to do fractions and pass an exam. And that's why I'm so drawn to the work that you do as well. It's the holistic aspect of raising a child and helping them, study and learn and be curious. And I tell you what's really important, I think these days, critical thinking.
Critical thinking, absolutely. And that's going to take us into our conversation about social media and the use of safe technology. But let's just pause before we go there to think about time and space. So you spoke about walking your dogs, and what did walking your dogs give you? And what does a tutor give to a student? And what do parents give to their children? And there's something about holding space for them, isn't there? That's where the boundaries go. They go on the outside, and then inside is all that warmth and that time and that eye contact and being present together. I have 5 kids, and they are full on, Sue. They are full on.
That's how it's supposed to be, of course.
I remind myself that I'm raising people, not
adults. Yes.
Raising adults. Who said that? Michelle Obama says that. I'm raising adults, not children. And that's
Yeah.
really, really powerful. So let's look at social media and the use of social media. And I know that last time we spoke, you told me that you had realized, it had dawned on you what a key issue social media is in mental health and in parenting. Could you tell us about that, please?
Yes, well, I saw something. In fact, I've got my son to thank for it. It's about smartphone-free childhood. And he said, "Hey, Mum, have you seen this? I think you could jump in and join in with this and be of help to parents around the whole thing about smartphones, social media, well-being, mental health, because there's this guy called Jonathan Haidt who's written a book called The Anxious Generation, and he's, a social psychologist. It's absolutely robustly academically researched. But more than that, all the parents that I talk to, there's this kind of knowing that although they've got a smartphone and they want them to be tech savvy, there's something not quite right in the balance of tech and family life and mental health. So that's when I started, and I just couldn't stop. I mean, now I've got this new podcast launching tomorrow called Navigating the Digital Jungle with Sue Atkins and friends. They're friends, yes, but actually I'm bringing in lots of experts at times to talk about AI or gaming or social media or girls. This week's episode is about girls and their self-image, their body image, their self-esteem, all interrelated around these apps. Listen, tech is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I love my smartphone, but I'm a grown up and I have passed my test to drive my 4x4 car. And we often just give kids a smartphone without preparing them, without talking to them. Usually around about when they're 11 or 12, they're off to secondary, but they don't really need all those apps, all that internet access, all those dangerous places that it can just suddenly take them when they're very young and not really experienced, a bit like driving a 4x4 without having passed their test. We tend to overprotect them in the real world and underprotect them online. So it's all about now balancing that, having conversations. And since I've started, it's just exploded, the conversations, and trying to help parents because they don't always know. We didn't grow up 24/7 connected, did we? And social media is great in some form because WhatsApp is a social media app and it's great for talking to friends. I was talking to Tara, who's on my podcast. She's one of five. She's chatting in the evenings to her sisters. It's fantastic. Your little one is talking to grandma, perhaps on Zoom. Fantastic, but not really with this very powerful thing in their pockets that isn't a toy. And I even saw a little girl, a baby in a pram with a pink smartphone attached so
Oh,
mum could flip it round when the baby's being pushed along to look at Peppa Pig. And I thought, that's not quite balanced. I don't want to judge people. She probably doesn't know. And lots of parents also think, oh, they're doing colours and numbers and they're learning. Yes, sometimes, but not always. So we need to think about it. And I'm all about raising those conversations. And certainly for teenagers, social media and comparisons like TikTok and Instagram, where everything's perfect, is not real life.
I think what's so interesting, what you've just said, is how non-judgmental it is.
Yeah, I don't want to judge people.
No, because we are all on this journey together, and this is
Yeah,
uncharted territory. And I can
yeah,
tell you that my kids are so much better at tech than me, and I'm
yes.
always on the back foot. So I don't know if I told you this before. We raised our children without any kind of screen.
You, yeah,
Yes,
you did.
which is
Amazing.
quite an amazing achievement. And then
Yeah,
the eldest, when he turned about 12,
yeah,
he sort of smashed that through that barrier, as
yeah,
eldest tend to. And now my
yes.
8-year-old is, she's steeped in screen and TV, and she has a very different childhood because of it. I
Interesting.
am, it is
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. All
Um,
within the same family. It's so
all within the
interesting.
same family. But I can
Yeah.
tell you that our favorite app, and this might be worth sharing, is
Yeah.
Audible. We're very into audiobooks in
Yes.
my house. We're
Yes.
all readers, as you won't be surprised.
I'll interrupt you because Tara talks about she's got four boys. Not all screen time is equal. So when
That's
you're talking
right.
about, using that for listening to stories and books, that's not the same as doing
Especially
something
if you're doing it whilst
scrolling.
you're playing loom bands or
Yeah.
sitting in the paddling pool or
Yeah.
so many other things. It's the difference between family movie night
Yeah.
and endless hours of screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really, really powerful to know there's a differences. I think it's also your point about girls and body image is extremely
Mm.
powerful.
Yeah.
And we see that, don't we? We see it with our own girls. And we grew up with, what did we grow up with? Just 17.
Yeah, Jackie for me.
Just 17. Oh, okay. Just 17 when we were 12 and Cosmo when we
Yeah.
were 16. And,
Yes,
and
yes,
these, these nonsense views of how we're
yeah,
supposed to grow up and how
yeah,
disruptive that is. To bring it back to tutoring for a second,
yeah.
I just got off a call with three wonderful tutors who were talking about the fact that they see their main role as being a mentor.
I love that. That's so much broader, isn't it?
Right? And if you think
Yeah,
about how a mentor is sort of the antidote to those nonsense Facebook, social media, stories of what life should look like,
yeah,
because these tutors are not perfect humans. They're just
no.
trustworthy and relatable and interested in you. And,
Yeah, I love that. It's like a wise old owl in a
yes,
way, isn't it? That we've lost a little bit because we live so far away from each other. Other generations probably had grandma up the road or an aunt and an uncle. But I see that and I love that tutors play that role or see themselves in that role as an addition to everything, because it's a holistic look at mentoring and coaching and also then tutoring. They're all linked together, really.
they are, and it helps, it's also helpful because it's purposeful. So,
Yes,
how we said at the beginning, it's not really about fractions, it's really about building confidence. But it is
yes.
useful to have fractions as the vehicle for building
Of
confidence,
course, of
right?
course. And if you've
So,
got to pass an exam, you need to know how to, decode that or write this or
yeah.
answer the question in a certain way. Of course. But I like that it's all in the sort of holistic mindset.
So let's talk for a little bit about it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
What are
Well,
your thoughts about
that's
that?
well, it does, doesn't it? I mean, it used to, certainly, going back in the day when my parents were growing up, I suppose, or even when I was. But now there's an awful lot of pressure on parents to be perfect. And also, it's an interesting thing. If someone looks over at you, if you've got a toddler having a tantrum in Sainsbury's or something, they don't tend to be there to support you and smile at you. They tend to go, no, or something. So I don't know when that all changed, but we've become very hypercritical and we can all raise other people's children, as my mother used to
So
say. Um, but I think it is a nice, even within a family, there are different styles and there is no one perfect style, although, it's quite nice if you can be sort of authoritative, not authoritarian. I can get my
nice,
teeth in for that one.
nice.
But it's a balance, isn't it? About relationship. It's all about relationships and connection, really, isn't it?
It is absolutely about relationships and connection. And I wonder whether there is a slight, I don't want to say rift, but there's more we can do in the relationship between parents and tutors. For
Right,
parents
that's
to really, this is
interesting.
the next
Yeah.
book that I'm writing, Sue, that I'm going to get you involved with.
Yeah,
For,
yeah.
for parents to begin to understand what it is that a tutor really brings to the table beyond
Yeah.
exam results.
Yes. I think what's interesting in the work that you're doing is you're raising that conversation because
Right.
I think when most people think tutoring or tutors, they think hot housing. They think, oh, a directory. I just need a physics teacher because he's hopeless at physics, or I need a maths teacher because she can't do her sums. You know, that is a completely different, you're in a different place with it. And that's
Yes.
why I love it. And I think your tutor's day is really important because it's raising the bar and it's helping parents see this is far more than just hot housing them through exams and pushing. It is actually about holistically encouraging, as well as all these other things that you need. You do need the skill set, of course you do. But I love what you do because I think you really are raising that conversation for parents to, oh, I hadn't thought of it like that.
That's right. And you see it. You see the penny drop with them. And
Yeah.
you mentioned that you had, is your daughter Molly, did you say?
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
Molly. Yeah.
So you mentioned that Molly had a tutor at one point, didn't you?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Because her dad can't teach her maths, even though he's a mathematician.
He's a chartered accountant, and
There
he
you
used to
go.
sit there with her, God
Yeah.
bless her, and him. And he had been a former teacher because I
Yeah.
met him when we were teaching together. He sat with Molly to help her with her numbers or whatever she was doing. And he did it three different ways. He's very patient. She got up and she seemed to get it that day, and she went off. And he went, I don't think she'll remember that for tomorrow. And it gets a bit frustrating because also you want to be her dad, and you
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to push a bit harder on some of it because we weren't hot housing her. She was struggling a bit and she wasn't enjoying it. And once she got the hang of this wonderful tutor, who was really lovely with her, and they had a laugh, and it was on a Saturday morning as well. So she was giving up an hour on a Saturday morning for Moll. But once she kind of got used to this lovely lady who was talking about all sorts of other things, making
Yeah,
her laugh, doing exactly what you're saying, encouraging her, building her confidence, and then helping her with some of these things, she started to blossom and bloom. And it was a delight to see. So, yeah, that's where I can see tutoring as being a really wonderful addition to school, a wonderful addition for parents, because, you can then, and if you get a good communication between parent and tutor, then you've got a perfect scenario, haven't
that's
you?
exactly right. You read my blog yesterday, didn't you? Where I thanked my son's
Yes.
tutors. So he has not been attending school much recently. He's really, really struggled with that. And so I put these three tutors in place, which was a massive commitment. But
Yes.
the WhatsApp groups that I had between them, so each tutor had, we had a little WhatsApp group with him, me, and the tutor, and I watched him learn to communicate with them. I didn't jump in, I just
Yes.
observed, and it became
Yeah.
a really interesting dynamic where I watched him learn to advocate for himself. I watched him learn to communicate to adults. And that
Fab.
became, yes, and that became a really interesting, we've talked about the power of WhatsApp at the beginning of this conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this was really that. It was me scaffolding his development.
Yes. How old is he?
He's 16.
So it's wonderful. There was a real growth
Yeah,
moment where you stepped back, not stepped forward,
that's right.
and allowed him the space, and
That's right.
he grew within it, encouraged by them, no doubt, as well.
Yeah. And we know as parents of teenagers that that's the job, isn't it? You have to
Yeah.
stand to the side and become a facilitator, which is really what we do as tutors as well. So let's touch one more subject, if you don't mind. And that
Yeah.
is, if you think about you as a deputy head and your husband as a former teacher, you probably know lots and lots of teachers who are also tutoring or have left the classroom to tutor. I'd love to know what your thoughts are about that journey because it's complicated and we don't want to encourage people to leave the classroom. We want to encourage people to thrive in the classroom. But it is interesting that there is now another way to be an educator. What are your thoughts about
Oh,
that?
absolutely, because education is changing all the
Yes.
time. It's hybrid because it had to be during the pandemic, and that was very stressful for both parents, children, and teachers. Then we've gone into hybrid working in terms of, who wants to trek up to London every day at 7 o'clock, and all the rest. Same for children in a sense. We have a problem that they don't attend school now because some children lost the routines of that. But for me, the whole point of tutoring and learning in a new way alongside what the school is doing, not instead of or criticizing, it's not, it's going alongside. And I think parallel learning like that is enhancing both. And if in a perfect world you could get the tutor and the teacher and the parent and the child to talk, wow, wouldn't that be powerful?
Absolutely right. And giving teachers a chance to tutor, to take a rest and step into the tutoring arm of a school and then go back
Yes.
rather than burning out is so interesting. I think this idea of you mentioned parallel tracks, and it occurs to me that that's another type of hybrid,
It is actually,
isn't
isn't
it?
it? I remember when I was learning, I study Adlerian psychology, and I was in Ireland, and I was on a course, and I work with a lot of parents going through divorce as well. And she did this thing, she got us up, and we were parallel as coaches. And what we were doing, we go alongside people. We don't rescue them. I don't rescue them. I try and empower them by asking good questions. But that's the whole sort of parallel learning of things. So you don't rescue, but you're there. And if you have the support and pick up, of course. But I think that whole approach is a rather nice one, really.
I think
Complementary.
it's a beautiful way to wrap up this conversation. So, for us as tutors and as parents to walk alongside students,
Yes, lovely.
alongside our young people to build them up and to,
Yes.
to help them to find their own independence and resilience, that's the journey that we share.
Yeah, and their own interests and where it takes them. And for lifelong learning. This is not just about getting them through an exam. For me, and I'm still a lifelong learner. I love it. And I'll go off, and even if it's, something completely random, I thought, oh, I don't need it for anything. I'm just curious. So, developing that curiosity, that ability to go off and research yourself, develop who you want to be and who you are. You never stop learning, and life's a wonderful journey then.
What a lovely thing. I love talking with you, Sue, and I'm so, so grateful for your time and for your support in what we're doing in Qualified Tutor and the Love Tutoring message. Thank you so, so much for participating today. It means the world to me.
Oh,
Give,
it's absolutely my pleasure.
give us a
It's
quick call to action on how to be in
oh,
touch with you, how to follow you, how to find out about your podcast and all those things.
okay, well, I'm thesueatkins.com, the one and only, because there's a lady sitting on a boat and a yacht. It's not me. So the one and only, so thesueatkins.com. Check out, and every week on a Wednesday now, we've got Navigating the Digital Jungle with Sue Atkins and friends, all about how to support learning, tech, AI, you name it. Tech meets family life. And we have guests and we have parents writing in, asking questions. We have stories that parents come and talk to us about. We're all in this together. So come and check out Navigating the Digital Jungle.com.
Fantastic. Thank you again. Thank you, Sue. Looking forward to our next chat. All the best.